Adaptogens is just this really amazing class of herbs that are non-specific to your body, and they're essentially helping you fight, or they support your system and able to sort of bring down the levels of stress, which I think stress and this whole adrenal fatigue is what kind of influences so much of the diseases and so much of the unwellness that we're seeing.
Welcome to the Clean Body Podcast. I'm Lauren Kelly, a certified nutrition therapist and soon to be specialized holistic cancer coach with a certification in cancer biology from UC Berkeley. I am so grateful that you're here. This podcast introduces you to the souls and brains behind some of the cleanest food, beverage, and lifestyle products on the market. Because what you put on, in, and around your body matters. From cookies, bread, and mushroom superfoods, to adaptogenic lozenges, clean medicines, organic mattresses, and fluoride-free toothpastes, we'll explore how the brands came to be, how scientific studies drove decisions about ingredients and materials, and most importantly, how the products support all the physical and mental microscopic miracles that occur in your body every minute of every day. Thank you for being here. Let's get this started. Welcome back to the Clean Body Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Kelly, and this is episode 4. Now, if you all listened to episode 3, you learned a lot about adaptogens. Don't worry, if you haven't listened to it, it's not a prerequisite, but we dig even deeper into adaptogens in this episode. I am talking to the founder of kindroot, Alisa Pospekhova. She is a health and wellness advocate and enthusiast. She is an avid yogi and an aspiring herbalist. After struggling with her own autoimmune conditions and discovering the benefits of adaptogens, she set out to develop a line of fun and accessible supplements that were just a little different than what was already on the market. She has found a way to package the power of holistic nutrition and plant-based supplements into little candy lozenges with the help of a Candy Hall of Fame scientist, which we talk all about. Before starting kindroot, Alisa spent 15 years building and managing healthy food, wellness, and beauty brands across the globe. Now, Alisa works on her kindroot empire from Seal Beach, California, and is continuing her education in holistic medicine, herbalism, and yoga. During the episode, we also talk about the sensory benefits of aromatherapy and the healing properties of plants. We also go through some herbs that you can easily incorporate into your everyday life for a healthful punch. Before we jump in, Alisa is offering 20% to listeners. So go to kindroot.com, choose which products you want to try, and put in the code CLEANBODY20. That's all one word on kindroot.com. And if you're not sure which ones to try yet, I highly suggest the snooze. Okay, let's get into it. Welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. How are you? I'm loving the sunshine and kind of transitioning into spring, so I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, it's been such a strange winter. Like some days, at least in Phoenix, like some days it's freezing and freezing to us is 50
Hmm.
degrees. And the next day it's crazy hot and I'm sweating. So it's been pretty wild. Like it's only mid-February right now and we're warming up, but
Yeah.
getting ready for a long, warm winter or a long, warm summer, that is. But I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. I have been using all the kindroot products that you so graciously sent me. And I have to tell you, snooze makes me pass out. It is glorious.
I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear it. It's my favorite. It's actually my favorite of the line, which I know you're not supposed to have like favorite children, but it's the I think it's the one that just came together in a way that just works really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. And I took it a couple nights and I was like, man, I am sleeping better than I ever have. Could this be kind root? And so I gave it to my friend and my husband, and they both had the same experience. And now my husband every night is like, I need a kind root lozenge. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I only have so many. So now we're like fighting over kind root.
Well, I can, no worries. I'll send you more. It's actually the one we're completely out of stock of it right now because it's the one where, I kind of thought the sleep one would be one of our best sellers, but I actually did not anticipate just how popular it would be. So I'm constantly not forecasting it, the production of it correctly, so we're always like running out. But I'll definitely hook you up with more once it's back in stock in
Well,
a couple
I
of weeks.
I appreciate that, but yeah, there's mood, there's focus, there's glow, there's so
Mhm,
many good ones.
mhm,
Snooze just happens to be my top one, but all of them have their benefits. But before we really hop into all the different products that kindroot is
mhm,
making and putting out into the market, I'd love to just
mhm.
hear your story into health and wellness and how you got started.
Yeah, I've always been that person that kind of was really interested in like herbs and things that are natural. I'm originally from Eastern Europe, and so I think things that like folk medicine were just very common. It was very uncommon when I was growing up to even have antibiotics or something like that. I mean, if you were put on those, it was because you were like truly, truly, incredibly, like gravely ill. And so coming to the US, it was just like this awakening for me. I came in when I was a teenager, and I remember like there was basically a pill for everything. And I was so used to like you took a hot bath if you were feeling sick because it would spike the fever and it would kind of help you work through it, or you would take some kind of root vegetable that helped you sleep. So that was always kind of natural to me. I remember in college, like I would spend my money on supplements, and I would go to the health food store and buy fresh squeezed juice. So it was very, very natural. But then I got a job in corporate America, and I kind of got wrapped up in the go, go, go culture and a lot of travel, and I started to really feel it in my health. I also always struggled with asthma, and I think I didn't realize at that point that it was an autoimmune condition, and so much of what you do with stress and environmental factors really, really affected. And I think I kind of got into my mid 30s, and I was really starting to feel like just a lot of symptoms of fatigue, a lot of kind of picking up every single infection that was going around. And I decided to really focus on myself and work with a naturopathic doctor, and I was going to an herbalist, and I was working with an acupuncturist, and I really started seeing really transformative effects of taking some of these really healing roots and vegetables and berries, and incorporating them into my diet, along with things like meditation and yoga, and just overall honestly slowing down. I think it's so incredible to see what your body is able to do kind of on its own if you just sort of like let it and you don't disturb the balance. um, and I was doing all of that. I was really interested. I ended up going into like apprenticeship for herbalism, and I was studying it. And during that time, I got sick. I was standing in Walgreens. I was going to buy another lozenge, and it just kind of hit me. I was like, it's interesting. I've been buying the same product for the past 20 years, right? You have like a choice of three brands, some private label. They all taste the same, they all look the same. And I think looking at it through the lens of somebody who was studying, nutrition and all those things, I was like, it's interesting. A lot of them are sugar, high fructose corn syrup based. If they don't have sugar, then it's things that are like isomalt or artificial kind of sweeteners that we now are learning are so terrible for your microbiome, and they actually kind of mess up your palate in terms of sugar sensitivity. And then it has things like menthol, which is great in the short run, but it actually makes you more susceptible to irritation. So you end up having to have more of those. So I started thinking about this idea of creating a better lozenge just from the standpoint of making it really simple, like just simple ingredients, the simplest manufacturing process that we can do. And as I was sort of starting to work on that, I was also traveling, and I had my adaptogenic formulas with me, and I had it in a Ziploc bag because I just didn't think about it. And TSA stopped me because they were like, "What are all these like weird powders that you're
Yeah, what's this
traveling
powder
with?"
you're trying to get through security right now, ma'am?
And that's where it really, really connected. And I thought, it'd be actually kind of cool to think beyond just soothing your throat, but can we actually look at a lozenge as, delivering beneficial ingredients and kind of being healing and being functional. And I started doing more research, and it was sort of interesting to me because there's so much innovation that was done within like gummies and chews, but nobody has ever done anything within sort of the lozenge and hard candy. And I kind of love the challenge of going in that direction and doing something on my own. So that was the start of this whole crazy journey, about 2.5 years ago. And now here we are.
Let's go back a little bit to, you made a statement that the body is just so incredible and what it wants to do if you don't upset the balance. And that is
Hmm.
just so true. Your body wants to heal. And it's really incredible that your body will force you to stop to give it
Yeah.
time to heal.
Yeah.
That's what
Hmm.
exhaustion and, illness is your body being like, hey, whoa, I need you to slow down so that I can take care of some things
Yeah.
internally and you can get back
Yeah.
to it.
A
It's
hundred
so
percent.
incredibly smart.
100%. And I am probably the guiltiest person of that. Like, I am your total, and I'm learning, I'm like trying to reset myself in my thinking. But, I grew up, I think, thinking that type A kind of adrenaline junkie, like go, go, go. I work, I travel, I do a red eye. And I think what inevitably would happen is like I could do it for about 3 months and then I would just crash, right? Like I would just
Mm.
crash for 3 to 4 days to the point where like I couldn't get off the couch. I was coughing. And I don't think I realized at that time, because we sort of, I think, in the Western sense, look at it as being a weakness, right? You're like,
Mhm.
you're not supposed to be getting sick or, needing downtime. And there's still so much, I think, even though I think it's changing, but I think people still kind of glamorize, you know, not sleeping and traveling and how many more projects can you kind of take on. And I see it actually a lot without the entrepreneur community. It's like who can get into more stores and who can like raise the most money. It's, a lot of that stuff. And I think um, I'm happy on the other side to kind of those see the movement towards health and wellness and like well-being and having a more rounded lifestyle, and like how much do we actually need if you're not happy, if you're not in balance. And I think ultimately for me, I now see the value of like taking a Saturday off or taking a Sunday off or taking an afternoon and then coming back to things with just totally renewed creativity after having a little bit of a downtime.
Yeah, you can just be so much more sharp and creative, like you
Hmm.
said. And
Hmm.
um, there's just so much to be said about that, about slowing down and allow yourself to be bored. Like
Yeah.
oftentimes great ideas come from being bored. And we need to look at life and building our businesses and what have you as a marathon, not a sprint.
Hmm.
Instant
Hmm.
gratification is just a thing that we want in everything that we do, but we also will glaze over learning lessons if we don't like really
Hmm.
pay attention and be present in the moment and allow things to come to us as they're supposed to. So I love that you said that. Being an entrepreneur, you want to be as successful as you can as soon as you can, but
Hmm.
also to build something sustainable and that like really speaks to your own authenticity and your values. It takes time.
It does.
But so you told me what inspired Kind Root. What inspired the name? Because I love the name.
Oh, thank you. I'm a very intuitive person and just intuitive leader. I kind of tend not to overthink things. And I was literally like sitting on my couch one Friday. I was brainstorming and it kind of came to me. But the idea behind it is this, a lot of the nutrients that we're using are coming from plants, and roots are just incredibly nutritious. A lot of extras that you look at are usually, a lot of them come from the roots of the plant. And to me, that's sort of like the kindness, the nourishment that the plants give us. So it came together. I literally jumped on Trademarkia, and I was like, it was open, the URL was open, the Instagram handle was open, and I was like, I just kind of took it as a sign and
Mm.
bought it that weekend and went for it. But I actually still can't believe that it was available. But yeah, I kind of love it. I think there's also something around having rooting for yourself and having that self rooted kindness in it, which I think is all kind of part of the brand motto as well, because we like to think of these little lozenges as people being able to take little moments throughout the day and really just kind of take 5 6 minutes, think through it, whether it's before bed as you're like have that snooze in your mouth, or whether maybe you just got out of a stressful meeting and you can just kind of take a mood and hopefully close your eyes and reset and kind of root for yourself and kind of get back to it.
Don't you just love when you stumble across like an idea and like you found the name Kind Root? The same thing just
Hmm.
happened to me. I'm launching one-on-one coaching services for cancer patients to like
Hmm.
have an alternative
Oh,
approach to their
amazing.
healing and holisticcancercare.com. was not taken, and neither was the Instagram, and I was like, "How is this possible? Okay, well, I'm getting all of it."
No, and don't
And
you think, like, at that moment, you're like, "This was meant to be," like, this is I'm a big believer in, like, serendipity and just things coming together, but it's amazing, congrats. I mean, I think that's such a huge area because I think so much of it, again, is focused on, like, the body and getting you well, but there's such a, other side of, like, surviving a traumatic experience like that,
yeah.
cancer and getting through it and getting the support, so I love that you're doing that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, just like you were saying, stress has people do not realize the amount that lack of sleep and stress has on your body. It actually
Mhm,
increases pro-inflammatory hormones in your body, which is a
mhm,
root cause of chronic illness. So
yeah,
it is all interconnected. But I did hear in another podcast you mentioned that a value of kindroot is emotionally connecting with your consumers. And
mhm.
I love that you said that. What does that mean to you exactly?
Um, kind of talking about what you said earlier about growing a sustainable business and it taking time. I mean, I made a decision really early on to self-fund this whole thing. And, I'm mostly like a one woman show with, kind of amazing people who choose to be involved on kind of a freelance basis. And it's definitely not just me. I mean, there's a team of people that I feel like help me, but I wanted to grow the business very mindfully. I wanted to connect to consumers. I wanted to understand what worked, what didn't work. I still answer every single customer service inquiry. I answer every single DM on Instagram. Like
I
it's
know,
really,
girl, you
really
are juggling so many roles.
but I think it's important, especially in the very early days, to be like truly, rooted in and, pun intended, and like truly be connected and understand where the
Mhm,
consumer is. I get asked a lot by, kind of the industry, like, what's your exit strategy? And, like, do you want to sell it? What do you want to do? And I was like, I just want to help people sleep well. And then maybe all those things are in the future, but I really am focused on, the product and the community that we're building out. And I really hope to do more of that. I want to develop a whole kind of sustainability and corporate responsibility part on kind route.
mm,
Like things like volunteering and working on the community. And the reason I actually haven't done it yet is because I refuse to do it in the way where I see a lot of brands do it, where they just say, like, we donate 1% of sales. And it's like a footnote on the website, and that's all it is. But in my mind, I want to be like, how many days a week do we, well, not maybe a week, but how many days a month, like, do we say, like, hey, employees get and we all go and we do something? And, or, like, how is it, like, how does it become sort of a living, breathing thing within the company? And, like, how do we make sense that it means something in what we're doing. So that's important to me, and I sort of won't do those things unless I can do them right.
well, when you're doing them, count me in. I will fly to Los
Okay.
Angeles and come with you. But that is just so important for brands to be thinking
Mhm,
about, not just monetarily, like
mhm,
how it's going to benefit their product, but consumers do care. Like they're voting with their wallet and they want to
mhm.
support a company who's doing something good. And it's not like buried, like, oh, we do this for the tax write off. And because,
Yeah.
we're a $1 billion company. And so giving $1,000 is like giving a penny. They really
Mhm,
want it. They wanna support companies who have a heart and are using their business to do good. So, I think that is really great. I do have to ask you a question that I did get from a lot of people on
mhm.
Instagram, and I know you've
Yeah,
gotten a million times,
yeah.
but why did you choose lozenges instead of gummies?
Well, so for me, having asthma and just being a consumer of lozenges, I mean, that was really, near and dear to my heart, because I was like, okay, the next time I have a throat itch, or I want something that kind of soothes my throat, I was like, I want to be able to reach for a product that I truly believe in, and I think that was great. But as I started looking into it, I just really got excited by this challenge of nobody doing it. I mean,
Mm,
doing gummy felt like sort of battling this sea of competitors where there was, I mean, there's a gummy for everything from like retinol now to, I mean, whatever. And within lozenges, we're really kind of the only ones that are doing this, and I'm excited about doing something different, trailblazing. And I also think that on the ingredient, the delivery side, I think one of the reasons people do really like the melatonin one is because rather than sort of chewing it and getting in your stomach and absorbing it that way, it stays in your mouth and it's a little bit of a slower absorption, which I like, which is why I think we're getting some reports of people saying like, I don't get the melatonin hangover. It's a
Mm.
little bit gentler in my system. I think there's something kind of special about that delivery that absorbs through your mouth as well.
I am trying to be so much more mindful when I have those lozenges. Like, don't
Yeah,
chew it, don't chew it, don't chew.
I
I can't wait.
know.
I'm so impatient. I'm like,
I know,
gotta
I
chew it.
know. Yeah,
So it's like a challenge too. It's like a good
mhm.
mental challenge as well as good for your body. It's teaching you patience and, you
That's
know,
very interesting, actually. I haven't heard that before, but now that you're saying it is a little bit of like a mind training where you're training yourself to be patient. I kind of love that actually. I
yeah,
might
that's how I feel.
Mhm,
So let's dive a little bit into the ingredients that are actually in your lozenges. And you
mhm,
have incredible ingredients in your lozenges. But I'm curious, when you started
mhm,
diving in, you mentioned
mhm,
menthol a little bit
mhm.
and how the conventional brands that are available at grocery stores most often, they're really masking what the problem is.
Right. Mhm,
They're not really like benefiting your body. They're just giving
mhm,
you a little relief for a little bit of time. And
mhm,
some of the ingredients you use in kindroot actually really do help balance out, and they are good for your body in a variety
mhm,
of ways.
mhm.
But what were some of the things that surprised you as you were figuring out, what you wanted to put into your kindroot lozenges about the ingredients that conventional products use and how they impact our health?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, for me, it was interesting just coming at it. I kind of looked at our lozenges in terms of like base and then active ingredients. And in terms of base, what I thought was interesting is that a lot of them either had these like sugars or sugary substitutes that I was very mindful around, both in terms of people wanting to sort of cut those out, but we also have so much more awareness around, IBS and people not being able to handle like sugar alcohols and some of those substitutes, right? I think we're also a lot more mindful around people with vegan diets. And what was interesting to me as well is that honey is a great, phenomenal ingredient. But there is a section of population that says, it's not really an ingredient that I'm willing to sort of touch.
Mm.
And once you kind of start looking at it, I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. If you're like a vegan with, maybe IBS or you're following a low FODMAP diet, or maybe you're looking at something gluten free, like there's maybe not actually kind of an option for you, which is, seems so extremely basic. So those were kind of like the basics that I wanted to look at. I wanted our base to be gluten free. My boyfriend and I both mostly follow kind of a gluten free lifestyle. He's actually has a true sensitivity to it, whereas like it for me, it's kind of a preference. I wanted
Mhm.
the base to be, vegan, and I also wanted to be low sugar but natural. I'm kind of a big believer in a have less of the real thing rather than I see a lot of friends talking about how you can eat 3 bags of something and it's only 2 grams of sugar, but there's a lot of filler in it. And I'm like, no,
Mhm.
honestly, I'm fine if our consumer has 1 or 2 lozenges a day. Like, I think that's enough. Have a little sweetness, kind of reset. But I really didn't want to promote kind of the gluttony of, you know, eating the whole bag or something like that, which I guess is great for a lot of brands because consumers are sort of buying more. But I really wanted it to be mindful. So I think those were the three things around the base that were just extremely interesting to me, that nobody could kind of like look through in terms of stripping it down. And then, of course, you're faced with things like menthol that can be extremely irritating. There's a lot of colors. There's a lot of colors, artificial colors. There's a lot of artificial fragrances. And then there's a lot of kind of like fillers and binders that are added to it as well. And if you look at our lozenge, I mean, it's extremely simple. You have like the base of the organic rice syrup. You have the active ingredients. We add a little bit of malic acid for tartness in some of them, and then we add natural flavor. So I actually believe, and this is not like a true statement, but I believe that we have like the shortest ingredient list of most lozenges that are sort of on the market that make them yellow or green or red. And I was like, I'm fine if it looks brown because the ashwagandha that we put in it is brown, and I'm like, I think that's okay, and I think it's okay if people see, like, green specks of lemon balm in it because they actually see what's in it. I don't think we have to sort of cover it up, and, I'm fine with it kind of being really, really stripped down and direct. And the other thing we did that I actually thought was different too is that if you look at the back of our package, we have a serving size of one. Because I'm always frustrated when I look at the back and it's like 2.75
You're
servings, or
like,
you know what I
"What?"
mean? And I'm like, am I supposed to really go through and do math right now and figure out what it is? And I think a lot of times it's done to either make certain things appear like there's less or make certain things appear like it's more. And I just kind of was like, we're going to do one, and if people have one, they know what they're having. If they choose to have two or three, it's easy multiplication. But I don't want to trick anybody into, looking at it and thinking they're consuming less or more something that could be in it. So transparency is definitely one of the core values of the brand and the product.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible once you start a journey of learning about nutrition,
Hmm.
how you see companies manipulate the nutrition label.
Hmm.
Like they really
Hmm.
do. There is some, I don't want to say dishonesty, but there's intentional foolery that
Yeah.
happens, like,
Yeah.
even with sugar, they have, like, 4 different names for sugar on one
Yeah.
package, and it's all
Hmm.
just being processed in your body as sugar,
Hmm.
but it can be really it can be intimidating for consumers
Hmm.
who don't want to be healthier, but they don't understand, what all of these compounds and ingredients are and how they affect
Hmm.
your body, and just like you said about artificial coloring, I was making faces because I recently read studies about artificial coloring and it staying in your body and dyeing your fat. And I'm just like, oh, please
Oh
stop
my
drinking those
gosh.
Gatorades. Like,
I
you
know.
know?
And we don't, I mean, I think we have to move away from this idea that food always has to be like super pretty. And I mean, it can be. And I mean, I think a lot of like natural salads and stuff you make, like you can make them really beautiful and
Oh,
colorful.
yeah.
But there's
And you
also a
can use
lot of
turmeric. If you want it to be yellow, use turmeric.
exactly.
Don't use yellow 5.
Exactly, or you can use like rose extract and things like that. But I think also a lot of things once you sort of dry them, I mean, a lot of colors and natural things come from, these like compounds that are sort of like alive and very fresh. But once you dry a lot of stuff, it does tend to be kind of a gradient of brown, right? You can sort of get like dark green to the brown. And I think that's okay too. Like not every drink has to be Instagram perfect and blue and pink and whatever. Like it's fine to just have something that's not pretty. It can still make you feel good and be really beneficial.
Yeah, I don't think the color of lozenges has ever like, opening yours, I don't think I've noticed at all, like, "Oh, this is clear, or this is brown," like, that's not what I'm looking for
Yeah.
anyway, so I don't think that's impacted my decision making whatsoever, and it was really interesting. You are doing a great job of passively communicating that you should only have, like, 1 or 2
Mhm.
lozenges throughout the day, or, like, that's what you would suggest, like, a
Mhm.
mindful consumption, because I have never considered even popping like, ripping up 8 and just, like, having them all at the same time, like, I've not that's never been a thought, so your
Mhm.
packaging is really subconsciously doing that job for you because you do individually wrap them, which communicates
Mhm.
that, like, it's, have 1 and enjoy 1, or, like, have 2 if you want to,
Mhm.
but it's not like I unwrap all of them and have a whole bag of, sleep snooze lozenges at one time.
No.
So you're pro
Definitely. No, definitely. I mean, that's where I think, on my end, when I see brands kind of pushing like only 1 gram of sugar per whole bag, I mean, that is like, I think, a very sort of a passive way of incentivizing people to eat the whole bag because you're saying like it's okay.
Mhm.
And I really want us to move away from that messaging generally, hopefully, as an industry, because I just think it's misleading. I think it's to your point, it's a little bit of a trickery designed to get people to eat the whole thing. And I really want us to just have less of good, real stuff.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Now, I think you kind of touched on it, at least I
Hmm.
picked up on it, but one of my questions was, why did you choose organic rice syrup,
Hmm.
to be one of the sweeteners in your lozenges?
Yeah, no, so it really was as when we were looking for it and testing, the key things were gluten-free, vegan, and something that, didn't have a really strong taste. So we didn't have to go through and like mask, because that's another thing you sometimes, see if you're using a base ingredient that has something that's really potent, then you have to sort of add a lot more. And organic rice syrup, obviously, then you're basically guaranteed that there's, no pesticide use, things like that. And we test all of our ingredients that come in regardless that. But it has a really, really mild taste. We were able to use a dextrose level that was really low in sugar, but still worked in manufacturing.
Hmm.
And when we were, and then we looked at tapioca, we looked at rice. There were sort of like multiple contenders, but this one was the one that kind of worked the best, was the easiest to work with, and we really, really enjoyed the taste of.
That's great. I want to dig into a little bit more the specific ingredients that you use in various products.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I just love to hear your input of how those have health benefits for
Hmm.
people. So I'm just going to kind of run through them and you can
Yeah.
tell us all, give us all your knowledge. But let's start with reishi.
Yeah, so reishi mushroom, love it. I mean, I think mushrooms are just having such a moment right now where people are kind of embracing them from being this like ew, and it's kind of amazing to hear how much kind of hate there is for mushrooms in the world. Like people have really kind of strong feelings against.
Mycophobia is real.
Oh my God, and it's so sad because there's truly, truly incredible species that I think even beyond nutrition, we're now, figuring out that mushrooms are able to like eat plastic, right? So like there's just such a future for using them in packaging and then the whole ecosystem. So I'm a huge, huge fan. But so I would, even before kind of jumping into reishi, I think the idea behind lozenges and having adaptogens in it is that adaptogens is just this really amazing class of herbs that are non-specific to your body, and they're essentially helping you fight, or they support your system and able to sort of bring down the levels of stress, which, to your point, I think stress and this whole adrenal fatigue is what kind of influences so much of the diseases and so much of the unwellness that we're seeing. So all of the blends have an adaptogen in it. Some of them have two, in addition to another active ingredient. So reishi is incredibly, powerful, great for immune system, but also influencing things like, mood support, resilience, and kind of overall kind of homeostasis in your body. So we actually have it in two of our blends. It's both in the immunity, where it works together with, vitamin C, and then we also blended it in the mood skew along with maca, which maca root's another adaptogen. It's kind of an adaptogen for like virility. It truly gives you that like energy. And then you have reishi, that's a little bit more of a balanced one. And again, they both work on, your hormone levels. They bring down your stress levels, support your adrenals. And, a lot of mood issues do happen because of stress and the cortisol. So much of mood now we're finding out is actually also happening in your gut microbiome, right? Like most of your serotonin is actually produced in your gut. So
Serotonin, dopamine,
right.
melatonin is also produced there. All these
Yeah.
neurotransmitters, they're all coming from, well, not all, but a lot of them are coming from your gut.
Yeah, so it's like if you're not eating healthy and that's outside of balance, there's so much things that you can kind of tape, right? So our focus was really on, it's a long term, it's not necessarily that you're taking one lozenge and you're gonna, feel incredible within, kind of 20 minutes. And nor do we think that's the only thing you should be doing, right? I think it should be done in conjunction with, meditation. You should be eating healthy, you should be managing your stress level. So I never want to be one of those sort of supplement brands that are saying like we're the answer to everything, and you don't have to change anything else. It's really meant to be a complement to your lifestyle. But yeah, I mean, I think reishi is amazing, just because it spans so many different things and it's able to support everything from your mood to your energy in a non very kind of jittery crazy caffeine way, down to immune system, which it's really really known for, as well, and it's actually known as the mushroom of immortality as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. Yeah, and like you said, everyone is gonna have a different reaction, although
Mhm.
everyone I've given snooze to has the exact same, like, "I slept great after the first use," but, no guarantee.
Mhm,
Everybody's body is
mhm,
completely different,
mhm.
and, like you said, what you eat or drink in conjunction, how you live your lifestyle, how much stress is in
Yeah.
your lifestyle, all these things will impact when and how you feel the difference from
Mhm,
adaptogens. And like, myself, I can feel things from food very quickly because
mhm.
I eat whole clean. So I can feel
Yeah.
differences now when I try
Mhm.
a new product or I eat poorly,
Yeah.
then I can feel it really fast. But someone who's just getting into the health and wellness space and starting to experiment and driving and cultivating a closer connection with their body and understanding their
Mhm,
body, you might not feel it right away. And so it does take a little bit of time of cultivating that habit for you to see
mhm.
results. So that is important to say. Like, you can't just take something and
Absolutely.
expect that you're going to be all zen in 20 minutes. It might not work that way
No,
for you.
no. Absolutely, I'm on the same page.
Yeah, and you do have some aromatherapy in
Mhm,
your lozenges, like lavender. I love also the flavor of the snooze one. I know
mhm,
I keep going in on this, but I just love that it has that lavender taste. And
mhm,
I think most people for aromatherapy, they think of essential oils or
mhm,
diffusers. They don't think
mhm,
about the benefits of aromatherapy orally. So I'd
mhm,
love for you to kind of talk to us about that. You have lavender and rose water,
mhm,
and what are
mhm.
the impacts that aromatherapy can have when taken safely orally?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I think is interesting about aromatherapy is that, again, I think we've been trained to think about it as like it has to be an essential oil, right? It's something that like you need sort of like a product for that. And I would actually probably caution against, drinking a lot of these oils because they do tend to be extremely concentrated. And I
Yeah, if
think
you have
there's people.
essential oils in your home, don't just, like, go drinking them.
And even then, I mean, they are very potent. I mean, they're natural, but they're very potent. So I always say, and just I think with anything that's herbal and natural as well, kind of approach it cautiously and see how your body reacts because they can be kind of pretty powerful. But I think I wanted to the lozenges to be kind of a full body experience. And so the flavors were developed on the principles of aromatherapy in a sense that, you can smell like why do we like smelling the roses? Well, they smell good. Well, why is that? Is because, they do have some of these like aromatic compounds that kind of come off of it. They enter our, sinus system and they kind of like influence our brain. So you can pretty much do that with food, like I love the smell of cilantro. Why do we like these citrus margaritas?
Mm,
Because citrus has that ability to kind of energize us, right? So, again, I don't think you necessarily need essential oils for it. You can really dig in your fridge if you're feeling like you have a, afternoon slump. Just take an orange, eat an orange, or smell an orange, and more than likely, like you will get a little bit of that pickup. Um, so we kind of approached it the same way. I think for snooze, lavender, vanilla, I'm a huge fan of vanilla and lavender, and I want to put lavender into like everything. And, the idea was like you kind of put it in your mouth, you sort of close your eyes a little bit, and you start to smell through your mouth because it's all kind of connected. It's one, sinus system. You start absorbing a little bit of that smell, and hopefully it works the same way as like lighting a candle in a lavender vanilla candle in your room would be, right? It sort of like gives you that little moment. When I was formulating it, I was traveling a lot and I would take a lot of like overnight flights. And I would always feel so hectic on the plane because there's just like people everywhere. And I really like my vision for snooze was that I could like get on the plane, I could put my mask on, my earphones, and I could pop a lozenge in and I can close my eyes and I could just have like a little moment within myself and kind of turn inward and not see anybody. And that's the same idea with, lychee rose water. Rose water and rose in general is kind of known for being really relaxing, uplifting, something really, really that helps with your mood. And so we put it in our mood skew. It's the same idea of somebody who kind of puts it in your mouth has a little bit of that uplifting effect that they might if they were to, smell a rose or maybe if they were to have a little bit of a rose tea.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a sensory
Hmm.
experience, aside from just tasting, the
Yeah.
lozenge, but I let it all kinda weaves in with the theme of
Hmm.
what we've been talking about in terms of slow down. So you said, grab
Hmm.
an orange, eat the orange, or smell the orange. Maybe a new
Yeah.
habit for us to cultivate. A lot of people scarf down their meals and they eat really fast,
Yeah.
and you should
Hmm.
be slowing down, and instead of saying, like, "Chew your food 15
Hmm.
times," which is like,
Yeah.
really? I'm gonna count every bite 15 times. Maybe it's just enjoying smelling your food for a couple seconds and smelling the ingredients and taking that in because it does contribute to the experience you're having when you're consuming your food and make it more enjoyable. Just like slow down.
100%. And this is why, you know how sometimes like you're not hungry, but you will smell somebody else eating something and all of a sudden like you're hungry for that. I mean, it's basically the same effect, right? It's just like your body and your brain kind of recognizing it and then they know that it's something that's, delicious. And I think interesting, I think in our the production of food that we have that's so industrialized, the scent and the smell is actually something that's missing quite a lot. If
Mm.
you smell kind of conventional strawberries, a lot of them just kind of don't have a scent sort of at all, right? Because they're like picked when they're not ripe and then they kind of ripen them up in the warehouses. But I was actually at a farmer's market this morning and I bought some strawberries and like I was washing them and just the water like hitting the skin and releasing all of those aromatic compounds. Like my whole kitchen was smelling like strawberries, and it was just sort of
Mm.
amazing. And then I went down this route of like, now I want strawberry ice cream. But it's very, very true. I mean, food is not just about tasting. I mean, food is so much about smelling and kind of having that full sensory experience.
Yeah, it is. You said multiple things there that I like had like bling, bling, bling ideas. Strawberries. I mean, I'm actually doing an interview with a hydroponic strawberry farmer. I just happened to buy
Oh.
his strawberries at Sprouts and I was like, oh my God, these are
Hmm.
so good because they're grown differently, and they use
Hmm.
less water and less soil. Some of them are grown in coconut husks. I'm not sure what he grows his in. I haven't done the interview yet, but it's
Oh,
super
that's interesting.
fascinating. Yeah. And then what was the other thing that you said that I was like, "Ooh, oh, farmers markets." I love farmers markets.
I
I'm
do
just happy
too.
that you went to a farmer's market this morning. That's all I wanted to
I
say about
I
that.
go I go every Sunday. That's like my little slowdown. Like I love my ritual of just going there and like buying it from people who grow them or they distribute them. And then I just find new things that I kind of challenge myself. Like I will look
Mm,
and a lot of it again it's that whole eye connection, but I will see something that I have no idea how to cook. I don't know what it is, but it's just like a pretty purple color and I'm
mm.
like, I must have it. And then I get it home and I'm like, I have no idea what
No
to do with
clue what
it,
to do with this, yeah.
but it
You
looks
gotta,
so
like, take a
pretty in my
picture,
fridge.
Google
Yeah.
image search, like, "What is this thing that I picked
Yeah.
up at the farmer's market?"
Yeah.
So on your website, it says
Mhm.
that these were formulated by an herbalist, which I'm assuming
Mhm.
is you, and a Candy Hall of Fame scientist. Please tell
Mhm.
me more about what this is.
So, I in terms of the herbalist, I mean, I dabble in it. I'm kind of an apprentice, but I actually worked with a couple like true, what I would consider true clinical herbalists to help me refine the blends. And with a Candy Hall of Fame scientist. So the thing is that when I sort of dreamt up this product and the ingredients of how I wanted to come together, I could not find a manufacturer that wanted to work with me. Like I was just hearing no, no, no across the board. Because the industry is pretty old school. Like they sort of make it the way that they make it. And I would have had to make a lot of sacrifices to produce the product. So I, in a crazy way, to just decided to start by self-manufacturing it. But I was trying, I was like on Pinterest and looking up lozenge recipes, and I was like making in my own kitchen, setting off alarms. Burnt sugar is like crazy, like it's insane. And so I was like, you know what, I really need help for somebody to help me figure out how to like actually put it all together. Cause I was like kind of getting there, but I think I was so what's interesting about making candy and lozenges is that like these scientists are truly like chemists. Like there's a very
Mm,
specific process to make it harden and you have to hit a specific like boiling point. And if you're under, it won't set. If you're over, it will be burned. And I found this woman who, she has like several patents. She retired from Hershey's. She was with them for like 30 years, and I just kind of called her up, and and it was just like me. And I sent her the deck at that point of what I wanted to do. And she called me back and she was like, I usually do much bigger consulting projects, but I allocate some time to work with startups because I just love them so much. And she said, I've never done a product like this, but I think I can figure it out. And I was like,
I just
you're
got
it. Like,
goosebumps.
I know. I was like, I love, like, because that is just like my attitude, somebody who's like super honest and direct, but also says, like, but I can do it, and, like, that's all I need, and it was incredible. I mean, she and I worked over about 4 months of kind of putting all the blends together, tasting them, like, perfecting the flavor recipe, and then I actually initially was hand making them in a small commercial kitchen here in LA. We were like hand depositing them, and then I had like my friends would come over and they would help me wrap every single one of them. So it was an absolutely crazy process. I completely underestimated how much time, like manual hand production would take. We could make like 12 bags an hour. Like it was insane.
Oh my god.
Um, but I just decided to kind of do it. And I was like, you know what, I'll figure out how to scale it later. And, lucky for me, I think once we scaled and I had like a website and we already had like a product that we could send to different factories, and I had a couple retailers that picked it up, I think people were a lot more excited to like talk to me because I somewhat was a little bit more legit, I guess. And so I actually ended up finding a little candy factory that like loved the product, wanted to work with me, and so we actually moved into their facility over the summer. So they're now like half hand produced, half machine formed, and that completely like changed our ability to actually start advertising and promoting and selling into more retailers. Because before, even if people would come to me, I would be like, I can't actually make enough for you to like sell it. Like if you have 4 stores, like I can't actually make enough of them. So it was sort of a crazy time, but I'm kind of thankful for it because it made me learn the whole entire process, and I sort of know what exactly happens if you're 3 degrees over, what exactly happens if you like misjudged a formula. So I feel like I am able to be extremely knowledgeable about the product that I'm putting out there, which I think is important.
I love your story so much. You had to take so many risks and take the bull by the horns and not
Mhm.
take no for an answer and just keep pushing and trust your gut instincts, which is so scary. I mean, what are some things you learned from that experience? I'm so impressed by you. Like, as you tell your story, you were hitting all these road bumps and
Mhm.
the universe opened up these opportunities to you, but because of the work you were putting in and the
Mhm.
belief you had in your product, and you just found creative ways to solve issues, and you've been so dedicated. I just am so impressed.
I you know, I think it's one of those things, like, looking back, I kinda look back and I'm like, "Well, this just seems kind of crazy," but when you're in the middle of it, I do think when you're starting a company, like, there are these, like, blocks that you face that you sort of have to work around, and, I think I just yeah, I was gonna launch it regardless, and I
You
think what
didn't
I was
wait for permission. You needed nobody's
no.
permission.
I was like, I'm just gonna launch it. And I think one of the things I kind of had to retrain myself because I have a business background. And I think what you're taught a lot of ways is like 5-year plans and 10-year plans and how do you scale and all those kind of things, which I actually think are very detrimental to our starting business. And
Mm.
I'm asked a lot in interviews, like, do you think your MBA helped you? And I really want to stay away from that because I don't want people to feel like if you don't have business credentials that you can't launch a business. I actually don't think it helps you at all in the beginning because the problems that you're solving are very different, and it really just comes down to like work ethic and grit and willing to kind of solve them. So I just kind of want to move away from that rhetoric that I think we have a little bit of that. You have to have it all figured out and you have to have venture capital backing and all of that stuff. Like I really don't think you sort of do. And so I was retraining myself to really take it one day at a time. And it was like, okay, well, today I just have to figure out how to make it in the lab. And then, once we figured it out, I was like, okay, well, now I just have to figure out how to make like just a little bit of them so I could like maybe sell it in a couple stores. And I was like, and then I'll figure out how to, move it into a factory. And then once we were doing that for about 6 months, I was like, okay, well, now I've been shipping the product myself. I'm like, okay, now I'm going to figure out how to move it into a warehouse and have somebody else do it for it. So, um, I just want to like kind of like make it okay for people to understand that like you don't have to know how you're going to do things 3 years from now. Like just figure out today, figure out tomorrow, and like every day, just little sustainable steps, and the business will keep growing. And I actually think it's a much healthier kind of way of approaching the business. But entrepreneurship is crazy. Like when you look back at it and you like think through it, it is, but I also think it's like it's the hardest but also most rewarding thing when, the things are happening and you get those wins. I think nothing feels as good.
I love that you said that, just about the 5-year and 10-year plan. I think that's relatable to anything, not just business.
Mhm.
It's relatable to your life. Like, I no
Mhm.
longer have 5 and 10-year plans because I don't know who I'm gonna be in 5 years. I
Yeah.
don't know where I'm gonna be in 5 years. I have ideas and I have passions and goals that I work towards,
Mhm.
but in my 20s, I had very defined 5 and
Yeah.
10-year plans, and I think I
Mhm.
ended up saying no to opportunities just because
Yes.
they looked a little different than what I expected them to look like for me to manifest my 10-year plan. But that is literally just an idea of what I think my life is supposed to
Mhm.
be. That's not necessarily what it's going to be. So you have to stay open to opportunity and explore, and things might come your way that, like, I thought I was going to be a freaking actress when I was in my 20s. And now
Yeah.
I'm like, no, get me as far away from Hollywood as
Mhm.
possible. Like, I have different aspirations. And so you can't get too if you do plan 5, 10-year plans, like, you can't get too attached. You have to stay open and you have to be
Mhm.
ready for anything that gets thrown at you because everything, I think, gets put in your path for a reason. And so
Mhm.
just got to stay open. So I love that you said that. For listeners, I was curious,
Mhm.
since you are so knowledgeable about plants and flowers and
Mhm.
adaptogenics, what are
Mhm.
some must-have things that you have that you think most people like really easy to put on your food or include in your
Mhm.
recipes that are really nutritious and nourishing for your body?
Mhm. So I love when you talked about, like using turmeric or, for coloring something. And so I think that whenever something becomes a trend, I think when people who kind of jump in on it, initially are like kind of the more hardcore, whatever it is, right? And so I think a lot of people I find when I talk to people, they feel like, this herbs and plants are like really, really intimidating. And they're like, I go into the supplement aisle and there's like 20 different plants. Like, which one do I need to take? Like, what is it going? And I kind of always say, like, don't go there. Like, start with cooking. Like, you're already cooking and you're actually already kind of using herbs in your food. You just think that they're called spices, but
Mhm.
really they're just herbs. Like, it's the exact same thing, right? So to me, I think, if you have a little bit turmeric at home, I think doing a golden latte with, turmeric, a little bit of honey, if you're able to, have honey in your diet and, some milk or not milk, great way of incorporating something that's like cancer fighting, great for your immune system, just great kind of overall, very very easy. You can also put a little turmeric on your chicken, making curry chicken. Here's your other option for sort of incorporating something in your diet that's very 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 easy. Lavender, just like we have, in the snooze lozenge. I mean, you can add a little bit of dried lavender to your teas. You can kind of sprinkle it on your salad. So just think of like easy ways of incorporating things into your daily lifestyle that don't require a special ritual, which is where I feel like people initially kind of fail, right? Like if it's something where you're like, I never have a smoothie, but now I have to create a fourth meal with a smoothie with all of these ingredients that I never buy, like you'll do it for 4 days and then you will stop, or majority of people will stop. If you're already having like an afternoon tea every single day, then maybe get a little like powder into it that you can kind of incorporate. And maybe you're getting a little bit of like red clover that's great for immune system, and you're just like steeping it in with your regular tea bag or something like that, right? Or if you're having salad for lunch every single day, maybe sprinkle some flaxseed on it.
Mm.
So I really want people to get into it in a very easy and approachable way. And then as you start to feel like a little bit more confident, maybe then you move on to a lozenge or a gummy. And then maybe down the line, like you start getting knowledgeable enough to where like now you can really make like you can start taking like tinctures or making smoothies with different powders and like mixing them, but just don't feel like you have to get into it in a way that's so like medicinal and so hardcore and so like requiring of a change of a behavior because I feel like that's where people ultimately fail and give up.
That is such good advice. You can make small little
Yeah.
changes to the things you're already
Hmm.
doing that will
Hmm.
have a nutritional benefit to your
Yeah.
body. So like you said, flaxseed and chia seeds are
I
great
love
healthy
chia.
sources of healthy fats and a
Hmm.
little, plant-based protein.
Yeah.
I always add cacao nibs to my
Yes.
yogurt for
Hmm.
antioxidants or
Hmm.
yeah, the only thing I would say is a lot of people don't know this and I didn't know it for a long time, but when you're buying spices, make sure you flip
Hmm.
around that label and it just says turmeric
Yeah.
or just says
Yeah.
ground black pepper because they actually do put a lot of preservatives and
They
fillers
do.
in spices too. So just flip that around and make sure it just says what you think you're getting. Little
Yeah,
tip out there
no,
for everyone.
absolutely. Yeah. I love that you brought up spices because I think spices is like like I mean obviously there's lozenges, but it's interesting just how kind of dirty the spice industry is. And I think that's a category that's really, really prime for innovation. And there are some companies that are doing really good work. And I think we'll start seeing more and more sort of like clean blends that are out there. I mean, nothing kind of irks me more where I see like proprietary spice blend or savory spice blend. And I'm like, what is it exactly? Like, is it garlic and onion? Is it just, you know what I mean? Like, just tell me what's in it.
Mhm.
Don't kind of like mask different ingredients. And again, I think it goes down back to just such a better understanding of irritants and people having food allergies and people following like FODMAP diets and things like that. So I think consumers are demanding just more transparency through from the industry, and I am just extremely excited about that.
Yeah, and I mean, it can be really difficult to know what the root cause of your
Hmm.
maybe bloatedness or gassiness
Hmm.
is. I was talking to a friend just earlier today who uses a lot of milk alternatives, and
Hmm.
she's trying to do everything she can to figure out why she feels heavy and bloated.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, what of dairy alternative are
Hmm.
you using? And let's look at that label.
Yeah.
And there are like emulsifiers and fillers in it, like
Yeah.
guar gum, which for some people, it doesn't drive like
Yeah.
a huge problem, but that might be irritating for her. That might be
Hmm.
causing some dis-ease in her body because
Hmm.
it doesn't understand what guar gum is. It doesn't know what to
Hmm.
do with it. And so it's causing a reaction that is manifesting as bloating and gas. So like
Hmm.
maybe, find a brand that is really clean. Like I'm going to be interviewing a brand called Good Milk and
Oh
it's
yeah.
a yeah,
I
it's a
know. Yeah, I love
very
their stuff. Yeah.
alternative, yeah, but they don't put any of that in their
Hmm.
products. So, like, maybe switch to a brand that doesn't
Yeah.
have those ingredients and just see if that starts resolving it because it is a little bit trial and error to figure
It
out
is.
what exactly, and every body is different. I think I say in
Hmm.
every single podcast episode, every body is different. So
Hmm.
it's a journey, but it's a journey that's worth taking. But before I get into the quick hit questions with you and
Yeah.
wrap this thing up so you can get outside or do some work and just stop talking to me, what plans do you have for the brand? Anything exciting coming up or anything that you're hoping to do in the future?
Um, I mean, I think this last year was really sort of focused on setting everything operational kind of in place. So I feel like this is really our year to, really grow our consumer base, get awareness going. So I'm excited to get them more out there. We have some exciting plans with increased kind of retail distribution, which I think will be great because I think as a new brand, it's hard online, right? Because there's so much like I have very little advertising budget, and when you're going against some of the big competitors, it's just like it's hard to get noticed. We're also planning some really fun content series where we'll be bringing like more education and information to our fans and our community as opposed to just kind of talking about the product. And I think finally, what I mentioned too I really want to start working on incorporating volunteering and just some of that kind of community outreach within the brand as well, which I think is just so within the DNA of what I created. But I just haven't had a chance to sort of look into it and do it right. But I think we're at a point where I'm ready to go in that direction.
As we enter this post-pandemic world, I think the one thing
Mhm.
we all need is connection with one
Very
another, with
true.
good brands trying to make a difference in the world.
Mhm.
So I hope everyone listening supports kindroot and is a big, fan and gets the products and does all the things they can. But let's wrap this up. I've got a
Yeah.
couple quick hit questions for
Mhm.
you. What does it mean to you to have a clean body? I almost said kind body because of kind root, but that sounds good too. But what does it mean to you to have a clean body?
I mean, I think it's just feeling well. For me, it's energy. I feel really quickly when I eat something or if I'm not treating my body correctly. I think to me, it just really gets reflected in energy. You mentioned, I think some people feel it in like bloatiness or whatever it is, but I think to me, it's not about, one of my herbalist teachers, one of the things she constantly says is she says, you can't tell how healthy somebody by their body composition. So she says, we really need to move away from this idea that if somebody is like, skinny and muscly and looks fit, that they're actually healthy. They might be starving themselves or eating a lot of artificial things, or, or somebody who's, more plus size or whatever it is. So, um, to me, it's really about the energy and the how I feel when I kind of get up every day.
What are some other diet and lifestyle habits you have that you just could not live without?
Um, it's really important for me to exercise every day or just get movement
Mm.
going. I think as I get older, the idea of like exercise in terms of like weights and gym, I'm kind of shifting that. And I've been like walking a lot more in this pandemic and I just like love it. I put a podcast on, which there's one on Spotify that I'm kind of obsessed with now. It's like a conspiracy theory one, and they go in and
Mm.
they take like a popular conspiracy theory and they either like prove it or they debunk it. And I'm like 100% like sucked into it. But yeah, I mean, I think like walking, moving, playing tennis, just doing anything for movement. To me, I feel a huge difference. And like, it's interesting how stagnant I feel if it's a couple days and I get too busy and I'm kind of unable to do that. And then I think the second one is really truly, eating nutritious, eating as clean as I can. It doesn't mean that I, like, cut things out. I think I used to be there, and I'm kind of much more in the maybe even not 80-20, but, like, 70-30, because I think
Mhm.
restriction is just not good, and I need to enjoy some of those bad things, as long as I allow myself to understand that, "Hey, it's fine to indulge, and then let's move away and get back to your sort of, like, baseline." And then I think the final thing, which has been so hard over the past year, I think for all of us, but I think human connection and just having that support system around you is just key. I mean, I could not have done the entrepreneurial journey without, having, a strong boyfriend at home who like supports me, or my friends who just, sometimes like, I have down moments and they're like, hey, we'll just come over, we'll hang out, or, we'll go for a walk, and it helps me kind of reset and, come back to it with a much better outlook. So in my mind, those are the three things is, movement, nutrition, and then I think social support system.
That's great. Yeah, I love that it's, movement. Anything,
Mhm.
like you said, you don't need to stress yourself out and you
Mhm.
don't need to hate your workouts. That's
Mhm.
actually not benefiting you because you're just raising your cortisol hormones and your stress in
Mhm.
your body. So just getting any movement. I'm the same. Recently, if I'm like not feeling a workout, I'll just hop in the pool and swim around for a
Yeah.
while because it's just like
Mhm.
just get movement. That's all you
Yeah.
need. And you'll just feel so much better after. So you don't have to do some like crazy high intensity, like sweat until you drop workout. Just like get out there and move your body and
Yeah.
make it more of like a moving meditation than something that just sucks and you hate. Last quick hit question for you.
Yeah.
What are some other brands that you are loving on? Who should I reach out to next?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I think there's just so many incredible brands out there, like just all the small little entrepreneurs that I think they're hustling and bringing just like really, really incredible products out there. I am very so there's a new pistachio nut milk brand that's out there called
Mm.
Tash or Tache. I'm not exactly sure, but they just launched, and I'm kind of really curious about them, just because I think we've been hearing so much about oat milk, and there's been cashew and everything, but nobody has kind of done the pistachio side, and I was like, oh, I'm really really excited about that. A friend of mine has a bar that's called BTR, like Better Bar,
Hmm.
and they're all of these really, really stripped down, simple energy bars that use adaptogens, but similar to kind of root, like they don't use any kind of like emulsifiers or like things in it. It's a very, very clean, stripped down, and it's female founded. So I love, supporting other female entrepreneurs as well. So those are like the two that come to mind that I've been lately kind of curious and also obsessing about.
What nut will get a milk next?
I know, I know, I know.
Every month there's a new nut that makes a milk, and I'm like, okay, well, great. Let's check it out. So let's just this is your
Mhm.
time. Shout out. How can people get their hands on Kind Root products? How can they interact with you and the brand? Anything you want to say?
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks for having me here. I feel like it was such a good chat, and like all the questions were like spot on things that I'm thinking. So
Oh, good.
it was amazing. So I love anything health and wellness and fitness. I just always love chatting about. But yeah, I mean, I think in terms of Kind Root, it's kindroot.com. Our Instagram handle is kindroot. And then I have one, it's egg in many baskets, because I feel like I'm always spread over so many different things. And you can find us, we're at Urban Outfitters Anthropology. We just launched on Thrive Market.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, I did not know any of that. That's so
yeah,
exciting.
no, it's been really, really fun. That was the story of when they came to us and they were asking for product, and I'm like, you can have samples, but I can't actually make it enough for you. But we figured it out in time, and we're working on getting on Amazon and just being kind of available in more and more places. But I think our site and then our Instagram is where you see, kind of a lot of our news, and sign up for our newsletter, because we'll be developing our content series very soon and sharing it with our community too.
That's great. Working all the models, B2B, D2C. You got it going on. Well,
Everywhere.
ev that's the whole point, world domination. Well, thank you so much. You were such a joy to talk to, just like you. I just love talking about these things. Like, I don't
Mhm,
think I've ever done anything in my life that I love more than this
mhm,
podcast right now. So I just really appreciate you and entrepreneurs like you who are trying to make a difference in the world and working from a place of heart and
mhm.
kindness. And so, Kind Root, everyone, I will put all the links to social media, website where you can buy the product in the show notes. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. But thank you so much. I really appreciate you and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Oh, you too. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Hi, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that interview. Don't forget, Kind Root is offering 20% off to Clean Body Podcast listeners. Just go to kindroot.com and type in Clean Body 20 at checkout to get the discount. As a reminder, this podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional care from a doctor or otherwise qualified health professional. This podcast is provided on the understanding that it is not a replacement for medical or other health-related services. If you're looking for help in your journey, seek out a qualified practitioner. See you next time.